This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Welcome, Alphas. Thanks for joining us. We have a groovy show for you today. We'll be joined by Army veteran Jennifer Campbell, and she is a trailblazing health and wellness expert, celebrated author, and trusted voice in the fields of nutrition, fitness, and holistic health. With a Master of Science in Nutrition Education and certifications as a personal trainer and health coach, Jennifer is committed to transforming lives through a functional and sustainable approach. I went super sibilance there. Sustainable approach to well-being, specializing in anti-aging and longevity. She blends cutting-edge science with practical strategies to help individuals thrive at every stage of life. It's going to be a fantastic chat with Jennifer, but before we do, Stacy, what do you know?
I do know this. I scream, you scream, and we all scream for some ice cream. It's July 1st, and that marks National Creative Ice Cream Flavors Day as a day to sample or try any odd combination of ice cream. Today is the day to do that. Get out and try something fun and exotic. Joe, what's the craziest flavor ice cream you've ever tasted?
So I'm not a big, what's the pistachio?
Pistachio? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's not something that I would have ever went out on my way to try, but I was at I went to a sailing trip, last July 4th, and I got to try a pistachio and peanut butter. It was almost like a milkshake, but I ended up having to eat it with a spoon, and it was delightful.
Interesting combo.
I know.
Well, I guess they're both nuts, though, right?
Yeah.
Tree nuts.
So am I.
You are absolutely nuts. This is fitting. 3 nuts. And
just like me.
Oh, golly. I've tried. I think you go to Baskin Robbins. I think I've been brave enough to try most of the flavors. The ones that I just don't understand are the really super artificial flavors, like bubblegum flavor.
Yeah.
I'll never understand the appeal. I think maybe because the bright colors tantalize kids, and it that kind of draws them in, so they think they're going to like that. Yeah. As my palate got older and more sophisticated, I was looking for that sort of pistachio peanut butter combo.
Yeah.
And I recently had orange creamsicle paired with key lime.
Oh, that actually sounds great.
And
because those are
good.
both sort of like soft, delayed flavors.
Yeah. And then I did
sense?
the gal was like, you need to try key lime and the coconut flavor. It puts the lime in the coconut. So tasty. It was like non-alcoholic booze frozen into an ice cream treat. It was fantastic. I wouldn't classify that as odd, but I do think it fits into the National Creative Ice Cream Flavor Day.
I just want to say, I don't know who makes those. Shout out to whoever makes those mini flavored Harry Potter beans. But buddy, when it says like dog food or dirty sock or whatever, the moment you taste it, you know exactly what that flavor is. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how they've done
it. That sounds gross. Do they really have that?
They have it.
Earwax flavor?
Yeah, so they have the mini flavored as Jelly Belly, Birdie. Yeah, she's trying to. Oh yeah,
Birdie Bots every flavor beans.
Yes.
Right.
Now it's fun because you get a little thing and you spin it, and you may get toothpaste or whatever, but some of them are so bad. One was canned dog food, and I swear I was burping up canned dog food for a day and night. It's the only flavor that ever made me literally get like I'll eat handfuls just because I like to watch other people be grossed out. But that was the only one that I got nervous. I stopped grabbing that flavor. That was a bad one.
Having been force-fed MREs and other questionable edibles, I don't think I'm going to pay for something that's disgusting with sugar in it.
You want unquestionable edibles now.
Yes. Well, no, I want ones that say THC or no, I'm just kidding. But really, All right, Alphas, grab a bowl of your favorite flavor ice cream, and we'll be right back with Jennifer right after the break.
The American Legion is raising awareness about PTSD and veteran suicide by offering hope, camaraderie, and support.
Be the one to help end veteran suicide.
Be the one to save one veteran.
Be the one to ask a veteran in your life how they're doing.
Be the one to reach out when a veteran is struggling.
Go to betheone.org and help the American Legion end veteran suicide.
Will you be the one?
Today, we are joined by Jennifer Campbell. In addition to being a trailblazing health and wellness expert, she's also a dual member of the American Legion and the American Legion Auxiliary. She served as the commander of Hollywood Post 43 in 2019 through 2021. That was a fun time. As California District 24 commander in 21 through 22, the very tail end of a fun time. And she writes a monthly health and fitness column for the American Legion magazine. Jennifer, welcome to Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here again.
Awesome.
It's awesome to have you, Jennifer. Welcome to the show. And by the way, thank you for your service. So you were Army, and you were, was it 88 Mike? Was that right? For truck driver. Truck driver, for those who don't speak the MOS jargon. What brought you to the Army? Like, why'd you choose the Army? Where are you from originally? What was your path?
Yeah. So originally from Iowa, it was never something I'd even really thought about. And my cousin up and joined the Army out of the blue. Last guy in the entire world you'd ever expect. And he was back on leave. I think it was around Christmas time, and he was on leave and was telling me all about the benefits for college and stuff. I was halfway through my my freshman year, so it was just about to start second semester my freshman year, and so I went to the recruiter's office a couple times, and I just joined.
Wow.
I called my dad, and I was like, "Hey, I just joined the Army. Do you want to come watch me get sworn in?" And he's like, "What?"
Did your dad serve, or did your mom, or anybody?
Actually, yeah, my dad was in the Navy. My mom was in the Naval Reserves.
Wow.
One of my grandfather was in the Navy. Other was Army Air Corps. My mom's stepfather was Army Air Corps. My mom's father was a hard hat diver in the Coast Guard. So a lot of military within the family. And it's funny, my sister was actually really interested in joining to the Navy. When they came down to watch my basic training graduation and saw, my sister's not somebody that like I can handle getting yelled at. I'm like, all right, whatever. She saw that was like, absolutely not cut out. Join the Peace Corps instead.
Okay, I have to ask, because you said you're from Iowa and you said your dad was Navy, but I always find it humorous when people say they're from the Navy but they're from a landlocked state.
Yeah,
how did that happen?
I mean, my grandfather was in the Navy. I guess I don't really. I know that my dad.
The water's always bluer on the other side.
Right. Yeah.
Or there's no water is what I'm saying, jokes.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's no water. Let me see some. But he joined during Vietnam, and he had a very low draft number, so he joined the Navy before he could get drafted into the Army.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, his father was Navy, and then I'm the one that went Army.
Do you have a most fondest memory from your time in the Army?
Honestly, most of it was basic training. I know that may sound weird, but I really, I don't want to say enjoyed it, but I just had some great memories from basic. I remember one going through our final field training exercise, and I'm motivated, I'm high speed, and my drill sergeant throws a smoke grenade, and we're going through the course and everything, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, how awesome would it be come out like Captain America, come through the biggest part of this smoke plume, hoorah. And it wasn't smoke, it was gas.
Oh,
yeah. So
So
And
basically, you
I,
were snotting and
I'm
drooling in
literally
your
not
yearbook photo.
I get all this, right? And I'm just dying, and my drill sergeant's just laughing because I mean they did it to all the platoons, right? Just think it's hilarious. But I remember seeing, so we were the first platoon to go through it. So all the other platoons are, doing it, and so my platoon's having lunch, breaking, and you hear everyone like gas, 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 and they all mask up, and I was like, I don't smell a thing. I just sat there and kept on eating. Everyone's in their mask except for me.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so those were like the fun things because it's like you're still so like innocent and like
Yeah.
super motivated, high speed.
I think for me, I'm not a structured person, if you haven't already figured that out. And so for me, being invited into this space where I had to learn to be structured, and also I've always tried to be kind of socially aware. And one of the things that I noticed while I was going through basic is how many of these young men obviously didn't have father figures. And it was such a fascinating thing for someone who loves people and loves watching people and seeing them grow and be better. And I think you can identify with that when you get to see someone sort of like stand up a little straighter, or their head tilts back a little bit instead of this like thing that people do when they feel insecure and scared. And watching these men teach these young boys how to shave, and it's like, in basic, they're so mean
Wow.
sometimes, but in these moments they're soft, they're teaching, and they're leading, and it's so cool to see that. And so I too, just like you, some of the most fond memories I have is going through basic, because it was such a dynamic change in my life to go from being this chaotic person to at least learning and having the skill set to be a little more organized and to take care of things. So I agree with you 100% there. I think that getting out though, and then how long were you in?
4 years.
So yeah, I was in. I had hospital time, but it's wild how such a short period of our lives can have such a dynamic effect. And I even to this day, my terminology and the things that people that have served, we talk differently. There's a different way about how we live. And I think it's interesting that you get out and you started focusing on health. Can you share a little bit about how that journey began?
Yeah. And so, I mean, for me, I honestly didn't have a rosy experience, in the military, which is why maybe some of my fondest memories are from basic training. The sexual harassment was intense. And so that was something, I think it really, like I was done at 4, I was like done, like absolutely done. And so I really didn't want anything to do with the military community for a very long time. Like I got rid of all my stuff, like, it just wasn't something I was really interested. And so it came as such a surprise for me that I am so involved now in the military community, because I just wanted nothing to do with it. Like I was just done. But, for me, one of the most enjoyable aspects of the military was the physical part of it. I was a collegiate athlete, athlete all through high school. Like that's always been a really big part of my life. And so getting into personal training was really kind of where I started on my health and wellness journey, right? And I started doing that, and I loved it. I love coaching people. I love helping people. And these are people that are, like in some of their most vulnerable moments, right? Like not only, there's some people who are, super high level and, you're getting them to a better place, but there are also people who start really basic, really low. And this is a very vulnerable position for them. And so it's touching to have someone have so much trust in you, right? But I found really where I saw the biggest improvements for my clients was really more in diet and lifestyle. So I went back to college, went to graduate school, got my master's in nutrition education, and kind of went along that path. So I've really, kind of done the whole gambit of health and wellness, and then really moving into a more functional space with it, whether it be more functional training, functional movement, functional nutrition, because that's really where we see it. I mean, there's these fads and changes and things but where do we look at where lifestyle meets health, like we call it health span, right? Not just your lifespan, but how healthy are you for the entirety of those years, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking of the entirety of, Joe, did you have a follow up? It looks like
No,
you're
I just anytime. Well, you're talking about this stuff, and it's just so funny the parallels. And I do want to mention one thing. When and so I grew up in a beauty shop. I grew up with all sisters. I had two daughters before I decided to stop letting God pick and started adopting, because I'm not gonna let him trick me into having five girls like one of my buddies I know. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not my path. That's not my truth. But I when I was training for a show, I got to where I had gotten really lean and people got really touchy. I'm not trying to relate to what you went through. I'm saying that I'll never forget this one moment. I was in a grocery store and this lady came up to me and put her hand on my, like, awkwardly on my lower back. And I turned around with a smile on my face because I just assumed it was somebody that I knew or whatever, and it wasn't. And the reason why that bothered me so bad is because I was in no danger. At no point was I in any danger. And I realized that that's the difference between me and someone who is smaller than me, or someone who might be, and it made me think about how everything that we do has an effect on the people around us. And I was like, I felt a little vulnerable in that moment, but I can't imagine what it would be like to be in a position where someone is being inappropriate with you, who has a position of authority over you. And I had never felt I mean, I'm a huge dude, and it's not too often that I feel that way. And so, as somebody who has daughters and stuff, I just want to say on behalf of the veteran community that I hope that your experiences have been better following that. And if not, let me know. I am more than happy at any point to correct others.
Well, and I think that's the biggest point, right? Like, and thank you for saying that, because this is what I find, and as somebody like as a commander in the American Legion, I was only the second commander in mine in 100 years. So it was a fairly big deal. They made a big deal about it, and it's great. But I would have all these people say like, oh, so and so said this about you, and I'm like, well, what did you say? Like, well, nothing. They come and
oh man.
Like, that's what it takes. It takes somebody, and usually a man, unfortunately. Like I can defend myself till the cows come home, or other women can defend me. But taking a big, strong guy that, others respect, it takes that to say, you probably shouldn't say that. Or why would you say something like that? Like, hey, dude, that's inappropriate. Like, that's what it takes to just have so little of that, I feel. Like, I guess that's what I've seen. They're like, oh, yeah, we support you. But when it comes in the moment, to be like, that's a messed up thing to say, man. Don't do it.
Yeah, I think they were also like conditioned, like so much of the military is conditioned to just shut your trap,
suck it
go
up.
along. Yeah, just go along.
Yeah.
It's easy to go along with it.
So much of what I do is to educate that there is such a thing as an ally, and it's it's good to be uncomfortable sometimes by calling people out on what they may not know is inappropriate, because they what I've also realized too is that so many people are a product of not only their environment, but their surroundings, their upbringing, and things like that. And they may not even know that what they're saying is completely wrong or inappropriate.
People who do that kind of thing are usually only do it because it's easy. And when you stop making things easy for people, they usually, and I have completely derailed this. I didn't mean to do that, but I mean, like none of our questions, like how do we transition out of this into something else? But I did want to say that I feel as somebody who is the kind of guy who can say, hey, stop, or I'll stop you, which is not the way I think. I'm 44. I don't play that game anymore. But, we have to watch out for each other and and making sure that you check in on people who seem uncomfortable and stuff like that is a big part of our job towards taking care of each other. And I'm done with all that.
I'm
I
gonna
just
I'm
wanted
gonna get us back on topic, Joe, because you said
You
you're
do that.
44. Well, I'm 45, Jennifer, and I want to pick your brain.
I'm 43. I get to be the baby.
Okay. Oh,
Oh,
you don't look a day
you
over
youngin',
25.
Look at you.
I look a day over 50. But anyway, so
Let's see.
you wrote a book, a guide, if you will, called Aging and Longevity, and I kind of looked over it. I'm looking forward to getting my copy from Amazon. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, alphas. But what I really want to know is, for somebody who's of my age, being a woman, I'm for all you alphas who are very curious, I'm going through menopause, and that impacts a woman's life. And so for all the other alphas who are women out there, may be interested in the kind of tips that you have, that things that we could be doing at home to improve the side effects and symptoms of that transition.
Yeah, and it's and you see all these women suffer, and that's really, it's not that normal, right? We really normalized the pain and suffering of women, and the menopause are just like, it's just something you have to deal with, and you don't, like, there's so many things that you can do. I mean, there's optimization on the really macro level, right? Making sure that you're exercising, making sure that you are eating well, making sure that you're sleeping. And I know that becomes a challenge with the night sweats and the hot flashes and things like that. Like, it just becomes more challenging. But there's so many options out there to support hormone health. One is really getting your gut in check. And that's just, across the board, right? Like, that your gut is tied to everything. But looking at, hormone replacement therapies, bioidentical hormone replacement therapies are so accessible now, and so, I mean, life-changing for people. There's also things that you can do. There's supplements that you can take to just help, ease symptoms. But looking at, because when your estrogen drops like that, your bones start to crumble, right? That's where we see those rises in osteoporosis and weight gain and things like that. So there are remedies that you can do. And so I know not everyone is comfortable with hormones, but when you're looking at it from a bioidentical standpoint, a lot of those risk factors that were seen, with the ones that were synthetic, you're not really seeing those. And so there's just so many advantages to getting those hormones back up to a more youthful level.
Is that something that you'd have to go see your primary care provider about, like be blood tested first to figure out where your how imbalanced your hormones are?
Yeah, you definitely want to have lab testing first to see where you're at. You don't just want to willy-nilly, well, I'll just take this. It should be based on data, right? This is evidence-based medicine that we're practicing here. I'm not a doctor, so let me say I'm practicing, but just from any type of practitioner, you want to know what those baselines are and what type of support you need. Whether you're in perimenopause and are just looking for a little bit, or if you're full blown into menopause and, you've gone an entire year without a period.
Yeah.
So, testing is absolutely, but looking at, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, that's still really important for women. Testosterone drops. And you'll see a lot of women doing, testosterone supplementation that you absolutely.
A couple of ladies in my gym are doing it to the max.
Oh my gosh, not steroids, Joe.
I know. Yeah. I was being a silly. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and they're not anabolic things, right? We're not looking to, it's not the point. It's just getting back to levels that you used to have, and even with men, like when they get back on testosterone, or even women that get back to a more therapeutic level of testosterone, they feel amazing. You feel amazing because when, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but when your testosterone's low, you don't feel good. But so estrogen, you can get there's a topical cream that you can get without prescription. Same with progesterone, you can get a cream. If you want it in an oral form, or for progesterone, an oral form or the patch or whatever that you need a prescription for. But you can get those through your primary care doctors. Sometimes not every doctor is comfortable with hormones, but looking for somebody that can refer you to it. But I highly suggest bioidentical. That's one thing that I really wish the VA would get on board with. They don't have bioidentical coverage.
Bioidentical.
Is that something that, like, if somebody wanted to look into bioidentical, they could tell them that they wanted to go out in the village to see a gynecologist?
There's so many physicians. There's a lot of websites too. If you're looking for somebody, like, I really encourage functional medicine practitioners, because they're looking at, the body as an entire system, not just like, well, if you have a migraine, just treat the migraine. Well, what's causing the migraine, right? Like, let's looking at what it's underneath that, so looking at root causes, not just a symptom. So that's something that functional medicine practitioners really subscribe to, or more integrative approach. There's a lot of resources. You can go online, and with the online resources, but there are websites where you can find doctors in your area, ones that are, would take your type of insurance. But there are options out there, and people who are just more, trained, they're MDs as well, or nurse practitioners or what may, but it's beyond just the typical conventional Western medicine model of health and medicine. So looking at things more as a whole, and like looking at, diet as, food as medicine. There's no medication, there's no supplement, there's no one pill that's ever going to replace the benefits of diet and exercise. It doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, I can anecdotally say that night sweats are real, hot flashes are real, and there are certain foods that trigger my hot flashes. So I will definitely be I'll be keeping a tally of what not to eat from here on out, and I'll take your advice, get some blood work done.
That's really, really important too, is logging things, because everybody's so individually dependent. We have like an idea, but if there's certain triggering foods, but like logging things, tracking things, it's really helpful. Is what I would tell my clients from a nutrition standpoint. Like, listen, you don't have to measure your food every single day for the rest of your life, but starting out, it's really helpful if you have no idea what a typical portion size is, or how much you're eating. And I'm like, well, how many calories you're eating? If you have no idea what you're currently doing, it's really hard to make change. So tracking is incredibly helpful. And not to say that you have to do it for, every single day for the rest of your life, but getting a frame of reference and a baseline is so important. So knowing what those numbers are and working with a doctor that can make those little adjustments for you, because sometimes it's it's little refinements as you start to get into a more optimal level of health.
This I love. This is exactly my kind of conversation. So I went from about 270 down to about 210 in about 3.5, 4 months with zero cardio, because I can't run. And it is unfair how much food is important. You can never outwork out really bad food, but you can eat good food and make up for bad exercise. And,
absolutely.
And it is like 80-20. When I got down to where I was trying to dip into single digits for a show, there's no amount of working out that is going to make that happen. It has to be food related. And for me, being 40, and this stuff for me, it seemed to come a lot easier. And then I don't know whether it was just hitting 40 at the same time 2020 hit. Flipping that switch is so hard now. And so other than the dreaded making it a habit, for me, that balance is the hardest part. For my own mental health, I've had to fall back on focusing on cutting weight. And I'm focusing on overall health and being strong, but I have got to do that at some point, because I've got a really jacked up other leg and I'm only walking on one. And so I may feel like I'm strong as a horse walking around at 240 or whatever, but I need to be around 215. It's where I just need to be for my foot. And so I love your focus on overall health and on balanced nutrition and that mindful movement and mental resilience. How in this world, and let me just go ahead and say also that I have been paying for a personal trainer for years, and it is easily one of my favorite investments. It's just to have someone that keeps you in check and makes you be goal oriented. There is no better money that I spend on my health than having a personal trainer. So I'm saying that because I want to ask you, how in this world where everyone is trying so hard to find the easy thing and finding the trick, how are you teaching people? How are you finding success in getting people to build these habits without looking for shortcuts?
Yeah, I mean, it's building a, I guess what you say, building a habit, right? Like making this a lifestyle. So figuring out, because I'll talk to people like, well, I don't have time to do this. Well, how important how important is it to you? What are you going to cut out or make concessions on in order to put this in, right? One of the best things that you can do for health and longevity is walking. It's not running, it's walking. So when people are like, well, so I try and walk at least an hour every day. I get up early and I do it. Like, I live in Las Vegas, so I have to get up early and do it because it's hot as hell out. But I don't have time to walk for an hour. I'm like, okay, well, do you have time for a half an hour? No. Okay, well, can you do 4 15-minute walks? Can you do 6 10-minute walks? So
I bet if you were to look at TikTok or Instagram on their phones, they would find those 15 and 30 minutes.
Yeah, and it's there. So how important is it to you, right? But also you have to build things. Like, you can't like let's say, like, I tell you to eat broccoli every day and you just detest broccoli. There's only so long that's going to last, right? So you have to make it something that's going to be sustainable, right? So let's put together a plan that's enjoyable, right? Like, I love wine. It's not good for you. Like, there's the studies are, out now, that, it used to be like, yeah, you could have a glass of red wine a day. It's good for you. There's no amount of alcohol that is good for you. Like, there's just, the risks far outweigh any benefit that you'll get, which
is that the sugar content and alcohol, or just the fact that it's alcohol?
I mean, part of it, but more of just like the neurological effects, what it does to the body in general, and just how it ages it. But that's something that I'm not going to just completely give up, right? So how do you manage those things, right? And so doing things that can be lifestyle based that people will stick with, and making it enjoyable. Like, if you hate to work out, like, okay, well, is there some type of rec league that you can join? But also having community in it, right? Like, so say you join a rec league, or you find a gym buddy, or you find a support group, or whatever it is, finding community in it. If you have a partner that is willing to be on this journey with you, amazing. Or somebody that you can check in with. Like yesterday, I really did not want to work out, and I text a friend. I was like, I need motivation. And like, he knows me so well that he's like, well, I'm doing it right now. And he was like, don't be a pussy. I was like,
Your cat walked up behind you as soon as you said that. So we don't have to fix that in post. You're obviously talking about your cat.
I mean, I hear so many people talking about playing, what is it? Wiffle ball or handball, or
like pickleball,
Pickleball. There you go.
Yeah.
So, it's fun. Join a community, do something. And, whatever your level is, that would be my suggestion. One of the things, I was in Los Angeles for 17 years, and I moved out to Las Vegas, going on 3 years now. And I did lose some of that fitness community that I had. My girlfriend that I worked out with, daily, I don't have that any longer. And thankfully, I'm self-motivated enough to do it, but it is, like you said, where you have, whether it's a trainer or a buddy that you're working out with, like, it just makes it so enjoyable. We are social creatures. We do have these communities. And that's one thing too that I talk about in the book is that social aspect. And there's something, are you guys familiar with blue zones?
No. What's that?
So blue zones are these little pockets across the world that have the largest population of centenarians, so people who live to be over 100. And so they study, like, okay, well, what are the commonalities? Things. Yeah. So like Mediterranean diet, one of them are diets that are high in fish, like Okinawa, Japan is one. Sardinia, Italy, there's Greece. Loma Linda is actually one. Loma Linda, California. But looking at the commonalities, and one of those commonalities is the social connections that these communities have. So it's really, really important for longevity. And we also see in the United States this, loneliness epidemic, right?
Yeah. It's rough. I think a lot of times, you're in your 20s and it's easy to make friends, and then you lose that thing that made it easy for you to make friends, and your circle is so tight that it's hard to invite people into it. And so, you're 30 and Stacey.
No, I know you said losing that thing, and I'm like, is that thing spare time? Because when you add kids to the mix and a full-time job, when you're 20, you don't necessarily have those burdens, my dear.
But it ends up sort of like you hit, for me, I guess it was around 37, I realized that those people that held up their end of my circle had passed away, or had moved away, or had grown away, or had fallen away. And then all of a sudden you realize that you've got about 2 people and you don't know what to do about it, and because we don't know how to make friends anymore, and we get lonely. And I think the gym, I think that maybe joining a biker gang, or whatever it is that you do to build.
Start with the wiffle ball team.
We'll start with wiffle ball, biker gang. Yeah. A
Get
Peloton
your
group.
pickleball.
But there are community in those, right? And that's really important. And if you do struggle with, like the physical fitness aspect, getting somebody to do it with you, or taking the time to, whether it be a class, something that you have to sign up for and be there for, is helpful. I love doing things like that. And I do miss, my trainings with my friend, and, whenever she's visiting or I'm visiting, we're like, oh, you want to go get a workout in? And it's great, and that becomes really empowering. Because you're doing something good for yourself and having fun with it. And it just leads to better decisions in general, like whether it be throughout the day or throughout a lifetime, right? But you just make better decisions when you're doing good things for your body.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, with your book, Aging and Longevity, what kind of feedback have you been? Thank you for sharing that. For those of you who are only tuning in and not watching the video version, she just held up the cover book, and you can find that on Amazon. We'll have that in the show notes.
Let me see it again. I literally looked away.
But
right
the cover it's white, has Aging and Longevity and a DNA symbol on it with an infinity. It kind of looks like an hourglass. I think there's a lot of meaning behind that symbol, but you can find, again, we'll have that in the show notes. But so with Aging and Longevity, what kind of feedback are you getting? What are readers going to see inside? What are you trying to drive home?
Yeah, so I try to break down the science of it. Like, this is so it starts out looking at the 12 hallmarks of aging. So these are the things that really age us, and breaking that down from a scientific perspective, but then also, like, here's what you can do about it. So the guide aspect of it, be like, all right, well, here's what you can do. So breaking down how to support your gut, breaking down how to support hormones, breaking down whole food diets, Mediterranean diets, sleep, looking at sleep hygiene, stress, community, giving tips along that, and how you build out your plan. So also making it something that's practical that people can follow. I have, and it's not to say that you need to take all of them or they're all right for everybody, but just as kind of general guidance, like the best supplements for longevity, right? And just breaking those down, because I get that all the time. People are like, well, what do I take? And that's going to be different for everyone, but looking at, kind of breaking it down by category, like looking at memory and cognition, which is, as I get older is becoming super, super important. I think in general, that's something that people are like really starting to focus on, because losing your mental faculties is terrifying. That's the one that scares me the most, because I'm still in good shape. I work, but if all of a sudden I can't recall things or, find words or just forgetting things, that scares me. And I know that Alzheimer's does run in my family. And I know that I do have genetic factors that put me at a higher risk for it. So I'm like, I am doing all the things, like pump me full of the supplements for cognition. I don't care. So breaking those down, I also have a optimal blood level chart, because the reference ranges that you see when you do get labs done, that's based on 2 standard deviations from the normal population. And our population is sicker and sicker and sicker. So that's hardly an optimal level. And some of those are super wide. So looking at a more optimal level. So I break that down. So when you are getting lab works, like you could say, okay, well, you may be in the normal reference range, but are you in an optimal range? And breaking that down as well.
How would I go about finding an optimal? I mean, because obviously that's a subjective thing. For the most part, how would I go about finding what my personal levels should be?
So it's a range, right? And so you have your reference range, and then you just kind of like take that down a notch, right?
You.
And
Okay.
it's all
So
based
get rid of
on
one of those standard deviations.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like, if the range is here, optimal is here, right? Or optimal is here, or optimal's in the middle. So I guess I'm using my hands for those who can't see, but it could be, it's a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So it's based on data. Like everything is backed up by science, right? It's not just like, oh, we think this should be the optimal. This is what the clinical literature demonstrates. So that's what's important. It's not just like, oh, well, I think this. Like, no, this is what science tells us. These are what correlate to better health outcomes. So that's really important, that it is based on science, but giving you a practical way to incorporate it into your daily life. So that's what I hope what people take from it. I created, some bonus chapter cheat sheets, where it's like, okay, these are the things to avoid on a food label, right? Because sometimes they're really, you don't know what that means, right? Well, these are ingredients to avoid. This is what this means. Or here's another sneaky word for sugar. And what to avoid, right? And like, here are better options for more natural sugars, or, here are nutrients that you should be having, and here's the food that they're found in, right? So just breaking it down, because I feel like it's some of this is really basic stuff, but people don't know it. And nutrition is an extremely complicated, but also extremely simple. So if you're looking at it from the macro level, it's pretty simple. But I feel like a lot of people are missing a lot of that information. I had a friend years ago, and it was funny, I just reconnected with him. So this is timely, but he sent me his lab work and asked if I'd take a look at it. And I did. And I called him. I was like, hey, I don't mean to alarm you, but you need to go to a doctor immediately. Like, his cholesterol and triglycerides were dangerously high. And I'm like, well, what are you eating? Right. And this is a guy with a
caveman diet.
No, I mean, like, he thought he was doing the right things, like, this was a guy who used to be an athlete, still works out, and is a high school science teacher. He's not a dumb guy, educated, but he was having orange juice and a banana and like all these like super sugary foods that you was taught were healthy, like, oh, he had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, like things that are typical. Was probably using white bread. No, I think he might have even been using wheat bread, I don't remember, but like not the natural peanut butter, like the Jif or the Skippy that's like loaded with the hydrogenated oils and sugar and things.
That's why I love it so much.
Right? I know, it's because you don't have to stir it, right? But these things that he thought he was doing the right way, and I was so surprised because he obviously went to a doctor to get this lab work done, that I was like, they didn't look at this and be like, sir, we need to speak. Not like I needed to alert it to him. But I had just actually checked in with him the other day, and he congratulated me on the book, and we chatted, and I was like, how's your labs looking? And he was like, he reached out and he's like, you saved my life. And that's really gratifying.
That's nice.
For what I do. And I'll get feedback from the magazine, the column that I write for the American Legion magazine. And people will reach out, like, from correspondence, and they'll be like, I started implementing these things, and, my doctor says this has improved my life, drastically. I had something, it was like, I started following your tips on walking and it changed my life. And it's just like, that's so touching.
Gratifying. That's gratifying.
Well, these companies,
why you do what you do. And, so that's my way of continuing to serve. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like they take this bad stuff and it's like it's on witness protection. As soon as we figure out what the new bad sugar is, they change the name of it, and then it's something else, and then it takes us 3 or 4 months to figure out who it is. It's like we're mobsters trying to figure out who the rat is, and the government keeps protecting them.
It's hard to know the right thing to do, right? You can try as much as you want, but you're like, oh, am I doing it right? So trying to just help guide you in the right way, and you're never going to be perfect all the time, but breaking it down to the basics. When you look at, like, nutrition is foundational. If you look at it as kind of like a food pyramid, if you will, like, here's your diet's foundational, and then it goes up the chain, right? And then at the very top is supplementation, right? They're there to supplement your health. It's an adjunct. So, like, supplement can't be your foundation.
Yeah.
It's got to be whole body health and looking at lifestyle. And I know that that's not the answer that most people want to hear, but it's the truth.
Well, Alphas, be sure to check out Jennifer's health guide, Aging and Longevity. You can go to Amazon and type in that title along with Jennifer's name, but we'll have it in the show notes to make it easier for you, with links to the book and social media handles and all good ways of getting hold of Jennifer. And you could flip open your magazine and read her article that she contributes. It's good stuff there. Before we sign off, Jennifer, is there anything that you'd like to share that we haven't already covered?
Oh, goodness. I'd say the top 3 things to get in check if you're struggling with your health: your gut, inflammation, and sleep. Those are the things that you really got to get a handle on. And those things those are the things that I see that highly disrupt, that are highly disruptive within the communities as a whole, especially the veteran communities. If you can get those 3 things in check, the other things start to kind of fall in place. So, really starting to look at your gut health, because that's connected to everything. If you can get your sleep under control, because your hormones, everything regenerates while you sleep. Your memory and cognition and longevity is highly tied to it. And inflammation. That's something that just, whether it's inflammation of the brain, inflammation of a body part, but if you have that chronic systemic inflammation. So working on tackling those 3 are going to drastically improve your life.
Well, you might need to take a Motrin, because your arms were looking pretty swole earlier too.
Jealous.
It means so much that you came and you shared your knowledge, your hard-fought, hard-earned knowledge that other people have to pay for, and you just gave it to us for free, just like on your newsletter, the health newsletter for the American Legion that we'll have in the show notes as well.
Yes, absolutely.
You're a rock star. And I hope to be aging as gracefully as you. I'm going to grow my hair out and everything. I'm just going to mimic what you're doing. We're going to see what happens. I'm going to shave. But no, seriously, thank you so much. It means so much that you're here. And so I just want to say Alphas, stick around. We're going to have some scuttlebutt after the break.
Family and community engagement. The American Legion meets the unique needs of local communities. We are veterans strengthening America. We are the American Legion.
Okay, Alphas, we hope you had a great break. Now it's time for some scuttlebutt.
4th of July is upon us, and with that, Americans together come to celebrate our nation's birthday. On the 4th, most Americans enjoy grills in their backyards, at beaches and parks, and just about anywhere you can gather.
I thought that's for girls. I got excited.
Yeah,
no, not really.
Some partake in parades or marches and enjoy the fireworks that are often launched at dusk. Along with being the mark of our great nation's independence, the 4th also has become synonymous with the Hunger Games for patriots, residing from sea to shining sea. And what is the award for those Hunger Games winners? The Darwin Awards, because we know alcohol and fireworks and just ass hattery
Natural selection
is what happens every 4th of July. The ultimate prize is the Darwin Award in the best case scenario, and the loss of limb and life being the worst. With that, I went down a wow, it's tongue twister day. I went down a Reddit rabbit hole to unearth some of the most wondrous booby prizes on our 4th of July celebrations. At Spin Cycle shared, 2 coworkers decided to celebrate the 4th of July in their own special way. The plan? They loaded an old washing machine with tens of pounds of firecrackers, lit a fuse, dropped the lid, and ran. Nothing happened. 20 minutes later, they ventured back to the machine thinking the fuse was a dud. Maybe try again. Presumably, neither was aware of the chemical friendship between oxygen and fire. As they lifted the lid, the entire washing machine exploded, landing them both in the hospital for several days. Shrapnel from the washer spread in a 25-foot radius, leaving a large crater in its wake. Considering the impact crater, each perpetrator suffered relatively minor wounds and burns. Wow.
I bet the Unabomber was like, interesting.
Washing machine, black cats.
As soon as you started reading that, I'm like, that might not even work. Oh, that's the point. It didn't work until
it didn't work. Oh, boom. At Monksip, don't work in the ER, but a guy came in this week who'd put a Roman candle in his pants for a witty and original dick joke. His shorts melted into his crotch, and he needed a skin graft. And reconstructive surgery for whatever was left of his genitalia.
That's a full commit.
So
he's really the dick joke now.
He's gonna really need a prosthetic Roman candle from here on out.
Oh no!
Back 90. And 1 year on 4th of July, I was floating to a different department, and an ER nurse came up to the department to borrow our ring cutter. The guy had bundled like 40 sparklers together and lit them all. And the heat basically melted the sparklers to and around his hand. And he had a charred black lump. Ugh. I believe he ended up being fine and not much damage was done to his hand. That legit surprises the heck out of me.
Yeah. It looks like maybe most of it was out.
Ugh.
Oh, gosh.
Out of range 19. Last year, we had a drunk guy who set off a firework in his hand. Extremely lucky that he only lost the tip of his finger and wasn't even bleeding that much by the time we saw him. But he was begging all of us to go find the missing bit and didn't seem to be able to comprehend that A, it was probably ash by now, and B, even if it wasn't, none of us were going to go track it down.
The ants probably got it anyway.
Probably. At Mistrom, my first exposure to the ER was at night on the 4th of July. There was a drunk miner who got messed up pretty bad after he rode his bike right into the back of a pickup truck. As a resident, the resident tried to remove his Budweiser swimming shorts, and he screamed, "Doc, what's under there isn't meant for you!" I admire his spirit.
Oh my.
Okay, and finally, this little ditty. At Meat Kissy, that's meat with an EAT, by the way. Guy comes in with his hand blown off, nearly passing out from blood loss. His friends were with him, and they were obviously drunk, kept calling him Stubbs and getting in the way. The friends waited while the guy went to the OR. Ended up losing his hand. He's in recovery, and all of a sudden, boom! A fucking firework goes off in his room. His friends thought it would be funny to throw some stuff on their friend, blowing off part of his foot. We lost a few toes. Well, I think the takeaway from these little gems is firearms and firework safety this 4th of July is paramount, tantamount, all the mounts. Make sure you're healthy, happy, and safe. Please.
And have better friends.
Have a designated firework operator who's not drinking.
Yeah.
And, space out your drinks. If you want to operate fireworks, please do so relatively sober. Don't drink and drive. Happy 4th.
Oh my. Whenever you do a rabbit hole, that's the one I never read them because I want to do the same thing that the readers are doing as you're going through these, or the listeners.
You want to feel it in the
moment. I want the
moment.
full experience. Yeah. And I'm telling you, you got me with all of those. That was fantastic. Meat Kissy.
Yeah. Meat Kissy.
Please run for president, because I can't wait for the moment when like Fox or CNN's like, this just in. His Reddit username has been discovered.
Sounds like a family name.
We're at an age now where that kind of stuff is going to really be brought up in the middle of like debates. Oh, so it looks like you're.
Sure. We noticed on your social media handles that your Reddit handle is at Meat Kissy. Could you tell us what the inspiration for that handle was?
Why was your Xbox name Teabagger Extraordinaire?
All right, Joe, what do you have for a story?
More than 20 U.S. Army museums that showcase the legacies of major historic units or bases will close in the next 3 years under a major overhaul of the museum system, Army officials said. So a list of museums and facilities that could close by 2028 obtained by Task and Purpose includes ones at Fort Drum, New York, which is dedicated to the 10th Mountain Division. Major bases like Fort Stewart, Georgia, Fort Leavenworth, I've heard of Georgia, Kansas, and Fort Bliss, Texas. The list of specific museums to be closed, an official Task and Purpose told Task and Purpose was still pre-decisional, which is probably my new favorite word that I didn't know existed until I read this, by the way.
I wouldn't have put those two words together.
Mommy, Daddy, are y'all going to get a divorce?
We're in the pre-decision stage.
What do you? Depends on how you act for the next 3 days.
Like, why don't you just say, listen, it's happening. We just haven't publicly announced it yet.
Pre-decisional. That's the most political answer I've ever heard in my life.
Sounds like it.
But senior Army leaders had approved of the plan and concept. Hypothetically speaking, maybe. So in all, the Army plans to reduce its current roster of 41 museums and other facilities, 38 of which are on or near bases inside the U.S., with 3 overseas, to 12. From 41 to 12, my friends. The decision comes as an Army's office for overseeing the museum deals with aging buildings and growing maintenance costs. That part I understand. Some of these buildings, I've seen them, and I know what it's like to try and keep an old building going. But I feel like there is room in the budget for some of this stuff, or at least to have it relocated. But what do I know? I'm just a guy. I'm not even a full guy. I'm part robot.
I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill.
Obviously can't be trusted. So we have more museum footprint than we can support, and that is the bottom line, said James Vizard, the Deputy Executive Director of the Army Center for Military History at Fort McNair in Washington, D.C. We can keep the museums open, but we cannot present a museum experience our visitors deserve, and frankly, our workforce deserves.
I thought you were saying, and frankly, I don't give a damn, but that's a different movie. That's a different quote.
It is a different movie. Army museums are overseen by the Center of Military History under its Army Museum Enterprise Doctorate and take several forms. 33 traditional museums, which are, open to the public and stuff. 4 properties dubbed training support facilities, which are attached to major training schools and stuff like that. 2 major warehouses in Alabama, and Virginia, which housed the majority of the system's 540,000 artifacts with magical powers, historical weapons, uniforms, vehicles, and other notables with educational value. The museums oversee a collection of 60,000 archived documents. So 1% of the Army's artifacts are on display at any given time in museums, the visitor said. That wasn't in quotes, so I didn't do the voice. Historians and curators regularly create exhibits from the vast pool of stored artifacts for showcasing museums. So part of the problem is that each museum can afford to hire a couple of curators, but every museum should also have educational specialists. That's what museums are for, said Vizard, who retired from the Army as a colonel after a career in artillery. You need to have exhibit technicians and educators, and those are where we tend to skimp, frankly, and that gets back to the museum experience. You're not getting the right museum experience if you just have curators. Vizard is very passionate about that.
I can see that. I wonder how he was with his soldiers.
What if I sounded what if he really sounds like that and he's like, how does this guy know me so well?
It's like I was recorded. I was recorded surreptitiously. How did they do that?
I can't spell surreptitious, but that's what they did. The National Museum of the United States Army at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, is overseen by the center, but its budget, staff, and exhibit spaces are not going to be affected by the round of closures. And it seems like one of the driving factors is, the aging facilities, Army museums, are just the high maintenance cost. I mean, this money's got to come from somewhere, and it's hard to denote the exact value of these. The problem is, part of it also is that people go into museums, and I went into the Medal of Honor Museum in Tennessee, and I absolutely loved it. I never left a review because the weird thing is about stuff like this is you get very thoughtful when you go in these places. And I don't think, I should leave these people a review. And that's really probably what would have saved a lot of these museums, is to have people sharing experiences as to what they mean to them.
I wonder too, most museums have the ability to do fundraising or have some sort of membership to help keep exhibit pieces up to date and to make sure that proper archiving is happening. But I wonder if these military museums, because they're on federal land or they're on bases, don't have that luxury. So is there a way to be able to maybe, okay, so if it's a foregone conclusion that these museums are closing on bases, is there a way to contact a local off-base museum that will absorb these pieces and make sure that they're cared for or whatever? Can local museums that can do fundraising absorb? I guess what I'm saying is absorb these pieces.
I don't know. Part of the problem is that a lot of them, according to Vizard, said that they're individual entities. So, we may have a collection of things. We build up a museum. The next commander comes in, is like, I don't care about a museum, and the money going towards this is keeping us from being able to train more people for war. So part of the problem is you have people that are historically oriented. Like I think I would be, if I had the power to put in a library or a museum somewhere, I would do that because I think those things are important. But then you may come in and be like, we need warriors, because that's how you sound. And you end up with people with different objectives that still have to deal with what the other people have done. So
I think there's a good example here that the U.S. Army Women's Museum is going to close. That's the one located at Greg Adams. But it's going to be considered for addition in other museums. So I'm wondering if that's how everything else will kind of play out, at least on some scale, depending on location. I'm hoping that's the case.
Yeah. Well, according to Vizard, getting all the buildings fixed up would cost over $65 million. And, the operating budget is $35 million. Leaky roofs, bad HVAC. And buddy, let me tell you, that's $10,000. Trust me. And for a building like that, it's probably more. But as museums are closed the next 3 years, Vizard said their employees will be offered jobs at other facilities. And I really hope that's the case. Smaller facilities are in Virginia, will be consolidated and stuff like that. There's a few of them that are going to work together, but many of them serve as local landmarks. Many of these, not all of these are federal. Some of them are location based or local. But the former museum at the White House Sands Missile Range, Vizard said, may close as an active museum, but its Missile Park, with dozens of historic rockets mounted in the open, will likely remain. And it's apparently not a part of the budget cuts, but I mean, there's every president and every new,
the new cabinets.
Yeah, all these new people, they come in with a vibe, and the vibe is cut. That's what, what he got elected on. And, we're not seeing benefit of that. We're not saving money yet. And that's what really, as Americans, when it comes down to it, that's why, people look back fondly, despite everything that went on with Bill Clinton. People look back fondly because people were making money, and that's just what it comes down to. But I'll finish with this. One question we've gotten a lot is, was this from Doge? Was this the new administration? It absolutely was not. We were working on drafts of the information paper, frankly. He loves that word, by the way. Before the inauguration, and we did not change them significantly in response to anything that happened after. This has been a long time coming, Vizard said. By the way, Mr. Vizard.
That was a great voice.
Thank
Joe.
you.
Amazing. I've personally read this article on Task and Purpose, and we'll have that link in the show notes. You can see the full list of museums being impacted and considered for closure or consolidation. Definitely worth having a look and seeing, if you happen to be a member of a museum or a curator or somebody who volunteers, think about these base closures and see how you guys can reach out to those nearby base museum curators and see what you can do about absorbing some of their stuff.
Alphas, thank you so much for listening. We hate having to be serious. It's really not our favorite thing, but this is one of those things that has to be addressed, not for us, but for everybody. And so, American Legion, we love our alphas, but you can subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, or send us mail and guest recommendations, or guests. You can just send them right to us. Just not by mail. Don't do that. That's dangerous. At
That would be a very
legion.org.
hefty postage.
That would be a heavy. Could you imagine the tariffs?
Great.
Legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. And remember to go try a new exotic flavor of ice cream. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, I think I like it.